Rayner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too would like to welcome the Honourable Lady, the Secretary of State, to her place, and I look forward to a constructive dialogue with her in the future. We've heard many passionate and expert contributions today. The Honourable Member for Stroud, who chairs the Education Select Committee, said that he has found himself with an unexpectedly large portfolio. I think it's safe to say that I know that feeling. And on that note, as equalities as well as education spokesperson, I echo my honourable friend, the member for Walthamstow, in urging the government to make the necessary changes to ensure that loans are Sharia compliant immediately. And I would be interested to hear the Minister's response to her idea, and can we amend existing legislation instead of making the change as part of this new bill? Mr. Speaker, we spoke a lot tonight about aspiration and supporting the next generation, and I can't help but think about the news that I've heard this evening about my honourable friend, the member for Wallasey. And I'd like to just say in this debate that the member for Wallasey has been a real friend and a real support to me for many, many years, both inside and outside this House, and she has always told many women from my background to always stand up and reach for your dreams, and you can achieve it. So I'd like to pay tribute to her this evening. On the subject of legislative changes, my right honourable friend, the member for Oxford East, raised concerns that the Office for Students will be able to revoke Acts of Parliament and Royal Charters establishing universities, and I hope the Minister will think again on that. And it was great to hear from my honourable friend, the member for Haywood and Middleton, and congratulate her on highlighting her career as a scientist, and also, of course, the need that we've heard many times in this debate today for funding and investments to ensure science is given its rightful place. My honourable friend for Birmingham Hodge Hill also made an excellent contribution on the need for a technical revolution, and I hope the Minister will respond to his proposal for a duty to collaborate. We also heard, of course, from a new backbencher, the honourable member for Surrey Heath. We heard from him quite a lot during this debate. He did not like the length of my honourable friend's speech earlier, but perhaps it's because it lasted longer than his leadership bid. More seriously, Mr. Speaker, more seriously, he said that universities must be a safe place for Jewish students, and again, as Shadow Equality spokesperson, I offer my total agreement on that point. He also said that he feared that we were, on this front bench, no longer committed to extending opportunities for all young people to access further and higher education. I would like to reassure him and other members of this House that that goal is indeed a shared ambition on both sides of this House. We all agree that no one should be denied the opportunity to study on the basis of their income, background, class, race or gender. The question is, Mr. Speaker, is whether this bill meets that ambition. And my honourable friend, the member for Ilford North, put it quite clearly that this bill introduces some unnecessary risks at a time of uncertainty. And he also absolutely frightened me to death, and I'm sure many others in this House, at the prospect of a Donald J. Trump University. Sadly, on this side of the House, we regard the bill as a missed opportunity which will set back the cause of equal access rather than advance it, expanding a higher education free market where profit takes precedence. First, let's follow the money and look at maintenance grants and tuition fees. University education in England and Wales is already out of the reach for many of those from low and even middle income families. The honourable member for Stroud praised the German economy, but he also will be aware that in 2014 the last of the German states abolished tuition fees in public universities. The Sutton Trust, which campaigns for greater social mobility, has shown that many British students finish university with debts in excess of £50,000. The Institute for Fiscal Studies has said that students will be repaying these debts until they are well into their 50s. Yet this bill will directly lead to the uncapping of fees at high-performing university and effectively introduces a two-tier system of higher education. The best universities will become more expensive and therefore less accessible at a time when the proportion of low-income students at many top universities is already falling. Quite simply, it's a tax on aspiration. The government's own equality impact assessment demonstrated the impact on already underrepresented groups in higher education. It found that female, disabled and black, Asian and minority ethnic students, as well as mature students, would be disproportionately worse off. The Secretary of State has made a great deal of fact that higher levels of students from disadvantaged backgrounds are accessing higher education, but she conveniently ignored the figures highlighted by my honourable friend, the member for Tottenham, happy birthday by the way, that 7 of the 24 Russell Group universities, including Oxford and Cambridge, have seen the percentage of disadvantaged pupils they admit fall over the last decade, while pupils from private schools are still 2.5 times more likely to enter a leading university than their state school equivalents. Yet the government will perpetuate and extend this by enshrining that two-tier system within this bill. They are slamming the door of opportunity in the face of young people who have both high aspirations and the talent to fulfil them. Mr Speaker, I listened very carefully to the words of the new Prime Minister on the steps of Downing Street just a few days ago. If you're a white, working-class boy, you're less likely than anybody else in Britain to go to university, she said. If you're at state school, you're less likely to reach the top professions than if you're educated privately. Yet this bill does nothing to increase social mobility or create the one nation Britain she promised. And we will judge her government by actions and not words. Then we come to the bill's proposals to expand the market for private providers, those who are in the education sector primarily to make a profit. The government appears ideologically committed to marketising higher education by promoting competition and introducing for-profit providers. They have taken a similar approach with schools, and I have yet to see any positive impact on them. This new profit-driven approach is a real threat to academic quality and standards at a time post-Brexit when it is even more critical to maintain and enhance the quality and reputation of Britain's universities, as stated by many members across this House, including my honourable friend, the member for Cambridge. Experience from countries such as the USA and Sweden demonstrates that private providers too often seek to compromise quality for profit. And I am deeply concerned about its impact on the terms and conditions of the staff. There is already an unacceptable gender pay gap in the higher education sector, alongside the growing use of 0 hours, temporary and insecure contracts. I fear that this bill will make matters even worse as employers seek to cut costs in order to produce profits. Similarly, removing the student number limit for university title will likely lead to an increase in the number of smaller institutions. Perhaps that is the government's intention. But there is a concern that the new smaller institutions may be more likely to cut corners in terms of resources, student-staff ratios, attracting the best academic staff and student support. But what safeguards will the government provide to prevent this from happening? There are many examples already of poor quality private colleges, particularly those catering for overseas students, failing to provide high quality courses. The government must learn the lessons of these market failures and build in proper oversight and regulation to ensure that quality is guaranteed. Mr Speaker, the bill also seeks to reform the Research Council and funding system, but we believe this is poorly timed and likely to be ineffective. Brexit has already put the funding of academic research in the UK into a prolonged period of uncertainty. Due to time, Mr Speaker, I will cut my comments short, but I would also like to share with some of the concerns that were raised by my honourable member for Sheffield on the Horizon 2020 funding, and that we need to ensure confidence in our research sector. I think it's of vital importance that we do that. Mr Speaker, it pains me to say it, but this bill fails to give our young people that chance to soar. It blocks their path, not because of their lack of ability or aptitude, but because they lack the necessary income or background. The bill promotes a market-driven, two-tier higher education system where too many of the brightest and the best are consigned to second best. Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister on the steps of Downing Street promised, when it comes to opportunity, we won't entrench the advantages of the fortunate few. We will do everything we can to help anybody, whatever your background, to go as far as your talents will take you. Mr Speaker, this bill does not live up to that promise. Let us keep the Prime Minister to her word and reject her bill.
Will the Minister of State, Jude Johnson...